If I asked you to get a piece of paper and something to write with, and to make a numerical list of all the things that you would be willing to die for, how long is your list?
The Panther 48.
Willing to die for.
The Panther 48.
Willing to die for. How long is your list?
What is the tribal self?
The Panther 48.
The tribal self is what goes above the immediate acquaintances of the social.
Willing to die for.
The family, the people you know, live next door.
You would be willing to die for.
Tribal self.
The Panther 48.
I'm talking about those movies, those yet unborn.
Again, this is your Panther 48. We coming at you. This is Memorial Day weekend, and we do not celebrate the oppressors' holidays, but we will memorialize some of our own people. Sitting with me is the other brothers of the Panther 48. I have brother Robert Ward Williams, who is the chairman of the San Diego chapter of the Black Panther Party and the national chief of staff for the People's Black Panther Party, headquartered out of Atlanta. Peace and power, brother Ward.
Black power, all power to people.
And I have Brother E, who is our Minister of Information Emeritus, and one of those day one members of the new Black Panther Party that was headquartered out of Dallas when Dallas chapter was the only chapter of the new Black Panther Party. He has been our Minister of Information on some level for the last 20-some years, and today he does not have on the Black Joker hat and glasses as usual because he's out in the chicken coop. Peace and power, Brother E.
Hey, cock-a-doodle-doo.
Anyway, like I said, today we're going to memorialize some of our fallen soldiers. So to start this thing off, I'm going to pass it. We're going to memorialize. We're going to start the show off by memorializing some of our soldiers. And then we're going to keep on moving with our Panther 48 war map. And we're going to build on the 8 local objectives of a local Black Panther Party chapter. Let me pass this to Brother War so we can get started.
All right, so I want to give a recognition and credence to our comrade, brother Anthony Zulu Fisher, who made his transition to the ancestors on Friday, May the 23rd. That brother coming out of Dallas, Texas, was a very powerful brother with that I had much admiration for. When I met brother Zulu Fisher in the Dallas chapter, you know, he was already coming out. He used to live in LA, I believe, the LA area, so he was already coming out rocking knowledge of what a Panther was. And so the brother was just a good, kind-hearted person who always wore the Black Panther on his sleeve, man. For a while, he had lived on his farm and was, you know, and we used to be able to go out there and do some training, martial arts, weapons training, and then he, you know, fully came on board and started a K9 unit for the new Black Panther Party, and he was just always the kind of brother that would bring people together, kind-hearted, natured, Panther, true and true. So I got to give recognition to brother Zulu, who's now with the ancestors.
And we'd like to give a peace and power to the brother Zulu, and the family says,
Ashe.
And we, you know, we can't be in May. I don't think we can be in May and not at some point talk about this brother. I kind of think we kind of dropped the ball that we didn't just do a full show building on this brother, because we could have built on the brother's transition and the elevation of the brother's political ideology. These things I think is very important for any true revolutionary and political activist. And if you don't know who I'm talking about, then I'm gonna let Brother E tell you who I'm talking about. We're in the month of May. Hopefully, if you consider yourself revolutionary, you done already figured it out, Brother E.
Y'all talking about Ty Himba?
And the family says,
Ashe.
Yeah.
I don't like doing memorials. I don't know ever what to say. I mean, people have read stuff about Malcolm, people have said stuff about Malcolm, and it's almost cliche at this point to really talk about Malcolm. But I think the sincerest thing that could be done is just to study his actual life. You know, listen to people like his daughter talks about how he used to read to his mother and write poetry for her. And Sonia Sanchez has some interviews that she did when she talks about, you know, did you ever hear him laugh, or, you know, did he ever touch you, or, you know, things like that that made him a human being, because people get so caught up in the icon and the superficiality, the aspect that we're always fed, him as a picture on the wall, conceivably in some people's mind, a picture on a stamp. But I mean, I guess for me, his words, because a book of his speeches was given to me in like the 11th grade by my drama and English teacher. And, you know, just reading at being at that point in my life, you know, when you figuring yourself out and figuring out supposedly what you want to do for a career for the rest of your life, that type of pressure and everything else, is living life as a teenager in high school, you know, and wanting to push back and having that natural urge, him giving direction to that with what it was he was saying, in an intelligent way, a way that made sense, that spoke to the actual experience. And I think for a lot of people that's ultimately what it is. And his greatest value is his ability to reach down and stand up at the same time, you know, grab the roots and reach for the trees at the same time. But yeah, so yeah, Brother Malcolm and the family say,
Ashe.
Shay. And I think we would be doing a disservice if we don't refer to him as El Hajj Malik El Shabazz, which was his name that he carried out of his transition from the Nation of Islam, because the brother was constantly evolving. And so I do want to acknowledge him in his state that he was in. So people just seem to not know who he was unless you say Malcolm X. But he transformed and he evolved beyond Malcolm X.
And that's true indeed. True indeed. We're gonna put up these as War say 9, and I'm looking at this say 8. So War gonna have to build on this for me and give me the understanding. But I'm gonna put this 8 local objectives on the screen, and we're gonna build on it. If you've been with us before, like David Foreman, who is a person that usually watches most of our videos and one of those day one founding members of the new Black Panther Party, then you already know what we're gonna build on. If you just accidentally bumped into our channel, give us a little time, sit back, play us in the background while you're cleaning up the house, and see what you can learn and build on it. If you're a true community activist, then there will be some value for you here. So anyway, let's get into it, y'all. Let me share this screen.
We can see it now.
Okay. All right. So we're gonna take off. See why I said 8? War. It said
Yes.
8 local objectives.
Yes, I see why you say 8, but there's 9 on there, and I will gladly explain why it says 8. So here in San Diego, we operate off 8 local objectives simply because number 9 that you will see at the bottom where it says to develop a Black Power movement, to me is something that just comes spontaneous to us. Here in San Diego, we have a multi-ethnic branch of the Black Panther Party called the Panther Party. And we operate more on the fashion of what Fred Hampton Jr. was attempting to do. So when we talk about a Black Power movement, we overstand the fact that we need to get other people involved in doing their part to fight imperialism and racism, as well as recognizing that there's different elements of Black power that needs to come together. But so point number 9 was not added in the San Diego, but across the board, we believe there's obviously should be 9 local objectives.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go. Let's take off. I'm gonna start it off, and I'm gonna let you, brother, start building on it. The 8 local objectives of the Black Panther Party. All power to the people. Black power means to define what is in the best interest of Black people, to develop what is in the best interest of Black people, to defend what is in the best interest of Black people.
One of the big things that we have to deal with, and the reason why we always start our local objectives off with define, develop, and defend, is because we need to get our people to recognize that you have to do things in a specific order. As Black people, and this is where Brother E comes in real strong, as Black people, we have not defined who we are and defined what our collective impact is on the current state of Africa and the rest of the world. What is it that we building on? Because until we operate from our own concept of definition, then we're not in a position to talk about self-determination. Right. So again, we go into our local objectives. We always start with the concept of what it means to define, develop, and defend what is in the best interest of our people. Because when you talk about establishing local objectives, if you don't first have a working definition that coincides with what your operation, that coincides with what you're supposed to do as a Panther, and operate from the position of recognizing that we have to define ourselves, then you're not operating from a standpoint of self-determination. So the first thing you must be able to do is operate through your own definition as a people. So we have to start with that, and then we go into the concept of developing, because anything that you have defined, it is now your obligation, your responsibility, and you holding yourself accountable to be able to go in and develop what that means. So therefore, you have to have plans that you're willing to obey and carry out faithfully in order to bring about collective sustainable change. So on that same level, we say we must be able to develop my personal skill set to bring empowerment to the table for a greater cause, and not let myself be fueled by immediate emotional drive of empathy, meaning that as a Panther, I'm not here as a Panther because I was hurt, and now all of a sudden, now I recognize that something that I want change, and then that change is gonna dwindle down after I get over my emotional hurt. No, the idea here is that we are revolutionaries, and we're revolutionaries for life. We do the work we do because we recognize that we as a people must be doing it, and we hold ourselves accountable. So as an individual, I have to hold myself accountable and recognize that this is what I must do in order to serve my people. It is not something I'm doing out of emotion. And then from that standpoint of defining who you are and in the best interest of our people, developing a action plan, developing logistics, developing a roadmap to implement local objectives. Now you go into the process of defending, which is basically processing the resource control and creative build generational advancement and maintain control of what is developed at a pace faster than the rate of any applied oppressive force in motion. What we mean by force in motion is outpacing the pace of oppression. Because keep in mind that the imperialists, the fascism, everything that is working against you in terms of oppression is at a constant pace. They're doing their job. They have a roadmap. They're mapping it out, and they execute it. If we are not operating on the same premise of being intentional in terms of how we define, develop, and then defend our cause, then we're not making progress at all. We're still moving behind. And so we have to be able to get to the point to where we are outpacing the pace of the oppression that is being applied across the board to us as a people. And so with that being said, there's no time for play. There's no time for relaxing. There's no time to sit back and approach this from an emotional standpoint. You got to put the work in. You got to spread the message. You got to raise the consciousness of the people. So that is our define, develop, and defend, which leads us into the concept of the local objectives. But keep in mind, when we define, develop, and defend, a lot of times we have to realize that we have to go into this with a perception. See, perception creates the ability to have a definition. So when we perceive something, if we're not perceiving it with our true African mind or a progressive knowledge base of what it means to be African, what it means to be working toward a goal, then when you define something, it's not going to come out on with the right definition. It's not going to be a definition that takes us towards self-preservation, self-empowerment, and self-improvement across the board. So we must perceive what power is. My people, and not see our people as victims, but see us as righteous freedom fighters for liberation and sovereignty and land. We must perceive a world that can be a better place, free from bondage of colonialism, neocolonialism, and its evils of exploitation and as a way of life. So when we talk about perceiving, then you go into the concept of defining. And after you perceive, then you can define. And then when you develop something, the only way you can develop it is if you have the mindset to pursue it. And so in the concept pursuing it, we talk about collective seeding and harvesting of ideas that will transform into direct actions that are not based on emotional charge crowd gatherings, meaning that I'm not here because I am specifically hurt, but I'm here because I recognize that our people need to be uplifted. Our people need to go back to being back to what we are as a people of power. So I can't do that if I'm only in this because I am emotional. So from that standpoint, when we talk about pursuing, it is basically giving you what we call the willingness, the ableness, and the readiness to actually operate as a Panther. Because being willing is not good enough. Being able mean that you are equipping yourself with the proper information, the proper knowledge, the proper resources, the proper know-how to make this happen. And then ready is getting out there in the field and committing yourself to it, which is why we say on the Panther 48, when we go back and we talk about revolutionary suicide and revolutionary discipline and revolutionary culture, that goes into the concept of pursuing. And then once you pursue something from that standpoint, now you're able to create a defense. And a defense means that you have a fortified foundation, which in order to do that, now you have to preserve. So the preserving of the movement goes into what we call continuity. So we develop continuity through recognizing that there has to be foundational, generational advancement, which means that not only the work that I'm putting in now is getting addressed, but I'm also preparing the next generation. One of the things that I like to talk about when we say that is when you think about a relay race, notice how the first person with the baton is still running when they pass off the baton. And so for the next generation to be able to properly receive that baton, they have to be running too. So that second person that's getting ready to get that baton is also running. They don't stop and then I hand it to them and then they start taking off and running. And unfortunately, a lot of times that's what we see happen in our community is that the next generation is not properly prepared to be able to hand off and receive that baton. So they end up revisiting a lot of the same things and lessons that should have been learned through that first generation that handed off that baton. Instead of stopping, you need to be moving and going in motion at the same pace and then expediting your path of empowerment. So when we pursue and preserve something, we have to make sure that we're implementing that as part of our lesson, which is also why we say here how to operate through kinetic action, not just action, but kinetic action.
And when you said that, Brother Ward, made me think about when we had the elder Daruba Ben Wahad on the show. And one of the things that he said that
I kind of jumped on the offer to talk to you is because one of the things that I've realized over the last few years, and I've done a couple of tours in Europe, speaking mainly to black people in Europe, in Germany and in Austria, in France, and Italy, and I realized that that many of us, your generation, you're not really in touch with your radical history, your radical tradition. And so one of the things that we see happening is that you're reinventing failure. Many of the struggles that you are up against right now, we've already won those battles. And because we really don't have a connection, a continuity between the radical histories and the revolutionary movements that have preceded you, you're forced to go it alone in many ways under circumstances that are completely different than when I grew up.
And that's what I'm getting that you're saying right now, that when you're running that race, when you're running a marathon, like when you're running that type of race, the person that's about to get the baton has already started running, while the person who's handing the baton is still running in order to be able to pass the baton, and the movement never stops. And our movement has kept stopping. It stops, and then it starts back up, and then it stops. And then a few years later, it starts back up. And we keep finding ourselves stuck like molasses because we're not moving fast enough because of these constant and consistent stops and us trying to figure out what we need to do next. And that's one of the problems one of the problems that we tried to create a solution for when we created the Panther 48 channel to document a lot of Panther ideology, Panther concepts, and Panther philosophies so that people wouldn't have to stop, so that baton could just keep moving. But go ahead, Brother Ward. I just wanted to add that in. So we'll get into the local objectives now with the first one to develop Black power through education.
So let's make sure all of us jump in a little bit on this. So when we say developing Black power through education, again, when we talk about foundational generational advancement, from the concept of education, we know that as a people, we have to be self-determined. We know as a people that we need to have an education that gives us our true right and our true path as a people. And that education is not simply talking about basic academics, but we're talking about an education by us, for us, that is actually taking us and giving us the things that we don't get, obviously, in a public school system or in a system that is run, designed, and controlled by the oppressor. You can't expect your enemy to be the one that's going to teach you how to liberate yourself and how to come up out of the grips of being a domesticated being. That means that if we want to be free, we need to work and develop the education ourselves to get us there. It's just like what you're seeing happening now with Trump. Trump is even erasing all knowledge of trying to erase knowledge of what the Ma'afa was and the contributions that Africans have played in the diaspora in regards to the power that we had. And so, and to me, you can't expect the enemy to want to do anything different because they want to highlight their achievements. And so they don't want to do anything that has to do with showing how basically everything operates off the backs of Africans. And so from that standpoint, us making sure that we don't be an inferior people or continue to operate through victimization and victimhood, we have to have our own education that uplifts us and takes us to where we need to go as a people. This is what is necessary when you talk about a foundation. Our foundation means that we need to build our own institutions. And so therefore, as African people, we have to be able to, develop our own Black power education.
I think the education part, and I always say this because of the time that I spent in my hiatus, where the education became the primary source of revolutionary activity because other things couldn't be done. And in that state, I realized that the education was the most important part. The 5% of brothers down there used to love to use peace as an acronym, and they said that peace, PEACE, meant proper education always corrects errors, or proper elevation always corrects errors. So if that's true, then for any true revolutionary, the education would be the very thing that will take us out of this oppressed state into a more liberated state. When we deal with the etymology, and I'm not good at the Latin, so correct me if I pronounce this incorrectly, but the root of the word education comes from the Latin educare, which literally means to pull out or to train up, to develop. And it's dealing with bringing out things that's already in you and bringing those things to the surface. Real education would train you, teach you, and develop you to be who it is that you was meant to be. It would free you from the false idea that ego has placed on you and actually allow you to evolve or to illuminate into the being that you was always meant to be. And that's what I think changes everything else. I mean, if we had the education right, none of the other concepts, ideas, none of the philosophies, isms, or anything else would even be mandatory because the proper education in the human being's mind gives them the ability to be what it is that they're meant to be. And that's why I think that this is one of the most important things. And we had a lot of brothers, and many of us know this, and many of you that's out in the movement, that's still in the field, that's on the streets, y'all could testify to this now. Some of you are these people. We have brothers and sisters that come into the movement and don't understand the value of education. They love the black uniforms, they love the guns, they love the bravado, but they don't understand that in order to do true real sustainable in order to make true real sustainable change, then the education of the people's mind has to change. Huey said that the number one goal of revolutionary was to raise the consciousness of the people. That was it, simple as that. The number one duty and goal of a revolutionary is to raise the consciousness of the people. That's the goal. Everything that you do as a revolutionary, I don't care if it's police to police programs, feed the children programs, if you out in the streets bucking the police, whatever it is, it's to raise the consciousness of the people. And one of the things that Huey said that the activity that you make could be the right thing to do. It could be a bold statement of courage, but if it does not raise the consciousness of the people, it cannot be revolutionary. Matter of fact, if it could be twisted and used to lower the consciousness of the people, not only is it not revolutionary, it could be considered counter-revolutionary. But number two is to develop and defend Black economic power. Brother War.
The thing about this, and again, this goes back to us talking about self-determination as a people. We actually go back and we even refer to it as a resource building. One of the biggest things that have happened in our community is our inability to control the resources of our own communities. And this just goes back to the carving up of Africa and the carving up of our way of life as natural people, and being able to control our resources. Keep in mind, through colonialism and neocolonialism as it stands, the idea is always to strip power from the rest of the world and exploit the people. Because of that, we still operate through this facade that in order for us to be able to sustain our life, we have to go to someone else's factory and produce goods just to turn around and be consumers of these goods. The means of production must be in the hands of the people. And so when we talk about developing economic power, we have to look at it from the standpoint of all the resources must be in the hands of the people and not in the hands of the elite corporate who are snatching up and stealing so much of the wealth and power. It was actually stated yesterday in an event I went through for African Liberation Day. A brother came up and stated that when he did the statistics in terms of people owning more than 100 acres of land, he said, period, across the world, it was a fraction of a percentage of people that own that. And when you break down the numbers and look at the amount of people that own that much amount of land, now we're going back to why we find ourselves in the position we're in now, because land is really the ultimate position of resource power. So whoever controls the land, owns the people. And as long as us as a people operate from this premise of allowing ourselves to be operating through what we call the renter's mentality, we will continue to be at the feet of someone else's demise. And so we have to be recognizing that economic power, resource power is what we have to do. Because no matter what education we put in ourselves, if we're not in a position of implementing through a power base, which is land, and controlling that land, and if you don't have control over your resources, you're doomed to fail, period. So it's not about just simply having an education or simply going back to raising a consciousness, but raising the consciousness of our people has to do with all elements of a dynamic, which is why in our mechanism structure, we talk about building infrastructure, we talk about building a institution, and we talk about building architecture. Because basically when we go into continuity, we have to restore and make Africa and our people, period, unified and as one. That's just super important that we recognize that all in is to develop that power base through land and everything that flows from those lands in order to put us in a position of controlling our means of production. And that's really what it's all about. If we're not doing this for that reason, then we're not going to be self-determined as a people.
Hey, hey, War.
Yeah.
You need to tweak number 2. I don't like number 2.
Let's tweak.
Whenever Black folks talk about economic power, we talk about one thing. Just like in politics, we talk about one thing, the vote. That's it. When we talk about economic power in this country, we talk about one thing, money. That's it. That's all our concept of our, finances is the only thing that we equate or see an ability to address the needs of the community, which is what economics is. What you call it, old Ibrahim and in Burkina Faso, it's more so the people. He's cool, love him, but the people of Burkina Faso are essentially bankrupting France and making it very difficult for other countries, because these European countries, these Western countries, have all this gold, but they don't. France don't have any gold mines, and it's because they've been sucking all of that out. But by them doing what they're doing with their gold, paying off their debt, they have no, World Bank debt anymore, making education free and all these other things. Between them and Chad joining the Sahel states, I think Ghana, I forget, I don't know how to say the name of their money, but it gained like 16% in its comparison against the dollar. So it's becoming more powerful as the Western currency is becoming weaker. And so this addressing our needs through somebody else's currency that's becoming less powerful and less able, especially in the future, for us to address our reality with, institutions are or must be, should have been, and we argued about this years ago, the focus of what it is we're doing. Institutions to address the economic needs of our community, particularly, as I said, as we get closer to a time when that piece of paper, or not even piece of paper anymore so much, it's numbers on your phone that tell you got X amount of dollars. As those things dwindle in their ability to address our needs, addressing the needs in the community on a personal level, on a people level, on us interacting. If someone's a good educator, making sure they're taken care of. Someone's a good soldier, making sure they're taken care of. Someone rhymes about our experience in the right way that we see as positive, they're taken care of. Whatever the profession or the trade is, we see value in it. We make sure that they're taken care of. We have to pull back to that and taking them out of our conversation. And that's the essence to me of what economic power is us. As long as we look to address the needs of the people using their money, they're still in power, because they get to decide how much of what you can get for that money in your pocket. Is it worth more money today, or is it worth less money? But when we start addressing our needs with our own personal abilities, with our ability to provide this or to provide that, to take care of one another and develop that sense of community, that sense of community begins to take care of the needs of the community. And that's economic power. That's something we had up until the assimilation days. Y'all, in the 60s, y'all call them integration. I'm calling them assimilation, because that's what the fuck they were. And you're not going to change my mind on that, War. I see you grinning, and that will be a lovely debate at some point. But the reality of it is, we still had vestiges of the full on back in the 60s. But when the concept of the individuality and looking, I got to get mine, you got to get yours, was flooded, particularly in our culture after assimilating and mixing in with them, we finally took on how they address the community needs. It's a bunch of individuals doing what individuals do to get what individuals want. And we've taken that on, as opposed to the community that we used to have in our minds. And so the economic power comes from that sense, which is developed and built on that education that we spoke about earlier. It all flows and it's all a part of the same conversation. But yeah, the understanding of what economics is. It's not money. Money is not economics. That's a piece of paper. It's part of the slave system. Money does not address the needs of the community, period. Only the people can address the needs of the people. And that's where economic power comes from. It ain't supporting Black business. That's still some bullshit. I'm saying don't do it. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying, understand, I had somebody on Instagram. I was encouraging folk, if we want to take, matter of fact, Juneteenth's coming up. If we really want to do something, take off that day. Don't go to work. Imagine if every black person didn't show up for work on Juneteenth on one day. You know how many hotels won't get turned down? How much retail and fast food shit wouldn't get any money made? How many hospitals would have to close down? I mean, we're looking at crippling them just by not and all this because I know the response. I can't miss a day from work. Da, da, da. Bullshit. Because we'll take a day off for our own birthday. I've known people to take a week off for our own birthday, but we're not willing to do it for this. A day. If we took a day off, that would hurt way more than boycotting Target because they wouldn't be able to make any money. They wouldn't have any, there would be no hiding that. You know, you don't go buy something on Friday at a Target, you're gonna go Saturday to buy it from a Target. But if we just don't go to work one day, that's money gone. They can never get that back. That's painful. And some brother responded saying that, you know, what if you're an entrepreneur? You know, but the idea is still the same. Don't do business on that day. But he expressed, isn't that the goal? Being an entrepreneur. But it's not. Being an entrepreneur is not a goal. Getting really good at the oppressor's game is not the fucking goal. We're not supposed to be trying to be better capitalists than they are. That's counter. That doesn't work with the African mind. Number one. Number two. It's just it's not the goal. The goal is to be liberated from them, not do better at what they do than them. And again, I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying understand what it is you're doing and where it is where we measure up in history and in time what's actually going on, what the actual effect of what it is you're doing. Call it what it fucking is, and stop pretending to be boss bitches and all the rest of this shit, and understand exactly what time it is. But yeah, economics is an institution that we still have very, very limited understanding of even just what the words mean. Somebody
And
told me that she bought a bunch of land or wanted to buy a bunch of land and put houses on it and do Airbnb and blah blah blah. And she made a comment at one point in time, said if if because if land isn't making money, it's a liability. And so it let me know right there, you know, where her understanding of economics and what it's supposed to do and what it does was. And that's something that we do not have a concept of. I don't mean black economic power. I don't mean black. I don't mean nothing black, just economics. Understanding what economics is and what it's supposed to do.
and to add to that, you're right. And here's the difficulty of that. Here's this why this is so difficult. Because the people leaps in consciousness do not happen A to G or A to Z. It can't happen. The people don't grow like that. People grow in steps. A, B, C, D, E. And when you understand that, you gain the ability, you learn the ability of how to properly educate the people. Now here's the problem. When E says when E talks about economics and that money is not economics, it's just one part of it. A person whose financial understanding or economic comprehension is at the stage of A, B, and C will not understand that. That will not make any sense because they don't know how to separate the ideal of economics from the ideal of money. Not understanding that money is only a tool in an economic toolbox. The currency, the thing that you utilize to transfer value, and that's because that's how money is, currency. It's the medium used to transfer value. At one time, you may be trying to transfer value by getting everything that you own or hold turned into gold, and then you'd have a wheelbarrow walking through the city with your wheelbarrow full of gold, trying to transfer value. People started creating other tools that was easier to transport from one destination to the other. You know, you walking around with a wheelbarrow full of gold, you can get knocked over your head and robbed. It's heavy. It takes longer. It takes more work. So you turn that into a coin. You turn that into a shell. You turn that into bags of salt. So forth and so on, in order to make the ease of transferring value, in order to create ease in transferring value. But money, currency is not the only economics. It's not the only thing in the economic toolbox. Etymologically, the word economics comes from the Greek economos, which literally means to manage a household. So when you're dealing with economics, you're dealing with the proper managing of of a household. The chief economist in the home should be the husband or the father, because the word husband, when you deal with the etymology, literally means to manage a household. So that is the person whose job and responsibility it is to manage the affairs of the household. And the household in this ideal is the community. It is where you live, where you perform at. So then your a proper understanding of economics would literally be who gets what, when, where does it come from, and how much of it do they get based on that particular need. When you truly understand what economics is. Now let's go back to talk about money and the game that we're in, because it has to be understood, and many revolutionaries have conflict in this. It has to be understood that we are in a game. It is happening, whether you like it or not. It's one of the things that Robert Greene said in the beginning of the 48 Laws of Power. Some people would not like the power game that is being played and just choose to sit on the sidelines. But the game continues on with or without your adherence to it. It's happening. What an intelligent person does is they learn the game, and they learn the parts of the game that can be bent, and they utilize the game to their benefit. Now I know that there are some, and I anticipate Brother E arguing with me on this, because I know Brother E's ideal is more to not play the game at all. But if you're in this society, and you can do that, you can choose. I know from people that have chosen not to play the game. Brother Ward talked about it last week in one of our discussions, because he deals with a lot of the homeless in San Diego, and they told him that essentially that he's a slave. They are free because they have chosen not to play the game, and they are under the bridge, homeless. But in their minds, they're free, and they may be free, and that's one of the things. And y'all both know that I was helping a homeless guy out at one point in time, and my vision for helping this guy was, my ideal of helping him get on his feet. He looked at that as this man has went crazy because, excuse me, he never had a desire to go get a job, or to have the responsibility of a vehicle, or to have to deal with bills. That's not his desire. He felt that he was free not having any of those things. And the way that he survived was just simply dealing with those people who was caught up in that rat race, who was going to work every day, who was taking on the responsibility of bills, who were taking on the responsibility of owning a vehicle. The way that he survived was just simply leeching off those people, or using those people's goodwill in order to make sure he had a meal for these particular days, or somewhere to lay his head. So even in that, he's playing the game. When I took sociology, it was interesting to me that sociologists have literally categorize the different people that would be in a society. They already knew that before you was born, they knew that some people were going to be revolutionaries. Some people were going to recognize the game is fixed, and because they recognized it, they were going to attempt to change the game. They recognized that some people were going to recognize the game for what it was, agree with the game, and make a decision to try to be the best at the game. So they would try to evolve and elevate to the higher levels of the game. You can see people like a Jay-Z or a Puff, or even a Bill Gates, or a Warren Buffett. They try to elevate to the highest levels of the game. You have some that recognize the game, see it as a valuable thing, see it as something that is what it is. There's nothing they can do about it, and they'll play their role as cogs in the game. That becomes your middle class. And then you'll have those who see the game as rigged, see it as having no value, and just simply refuse to play the game. And that be your vagrants, or your homeless, or your people that live pillar to post, that refuse to settle down and just move. You could see it on shows like Kung Fu with David Carradine back in the day, or in movies. What was the name? Tom Cruise played the character, and I can't remember his name, Reacher. He played the character Jack Reacher, a person that basically had no bank account. He had no clothes, just a pair of pants and the shirt that was on his back, and he moved from city to city and just lived and dealt with situations as they come. So these are the categories that sociologists recognize that would be here. But this one thing that I think is very important, and even I, just in the last couple of years, just realized and accepted this, that this is a game, to in the sense that, and I think y'all think I'm just saying that because it sounds cool. This is really a game. This is truly a game. And just like everything else, a camera came from human beings studying the human eye, taking the ideas of how the human eye worked and creating and developing an electronic human eye that had the ability to record images. We call that a camera. A speaker operates the same way that a human voice works. You know, a microphone operates the same way that the human ear works. Even a computer's motherboard is based off us starting to understand certain aspects of how the human brain works. The way that they have created society is based off what's called gamification. It's a game. And in sociology, you have what's called, to help you to understand and make decisions, you have what's called game theory. This is all a game. And even on the streets, we call it the game. You watch a movie, you watch a TV show like The Wire. You're gonna hear just about every character on every level, whether it's the great kingpins like Avon Barksdale or the smallest pawns like Bodie. They all say it. The game is the game. It's all in the game, yo, no matter what it is. You know, no matter what the situation is, it's just the game. It's nothing personal. It's the game. And I'm expressing this to this point because I think once you understand that it's a game, you start to understand certain things about game that all games have in common. Games have an objective. They have a playing ground, a boundary that you can move in. If you're playing chess, there are certain squares on the board that you can and can't move in based on what piece you're moving at the time. There are rules around the game, and there are even ways to break some of those rules or to coagulate or conflict some of those rules in the game. But you have to understand that you are definitely playing a game. And I'm gonna say this, and I'm gonna open the mic up so that the brothers can come at me with a little argument, with a little debate, or even a little add-on. Last night I was watching. Y'all know I'm a Star Wars fan, so I was watching the Clone Wars, and this idea jumped out at me. It jumped out at me. Look at E Ray shaking his head when I talk about the Clone Wars. But it jumped out at me how the Jedi were tricked. It was all a game. Here you have Emperor Palpatine, I think his name was, and he was the Sith Master. He was the very person that the Jedi was looking for. The Jedi was, but he was their actually their commander. He was the leader of their government. And the very enemy that the Jedi was looking for was the one deploying the Jedi all over the galaxy to look for this enemy, which was him. Now, this is ironic. Now, think about this. I want y'all to think about this. This is kind of deep when you think about it. The Jedi was out spread all over the galaxy, fighting these not clones. They was fighting these droids, not real people. So the Jedi was out using all of their power, all their understanding to basically fight a fake enemy. It was robots. They was out fighting a fake manufactured enemy. And by doing this, they had left the galaxy unprotected. So you had lawlessness going on in all these different planets and all of these different worlds and all of these different governments because the Jedi was out fighting fires. They was out fighting a fake enemy. And by sending the Jedi out, fighting this fake enemy, fighting this ghost, so to speak, the Sith Master, without actually fighting the Jedi himself, was actually creating and producing the world that he wanted. A world of lawlessness, a world that the Jedi couldn't protect to the point that it got that the lawlessness that the Sith Master was trying to create had become so powerful that by the time the Jedi realized what was going on, they couldn't fight it. It was a game, and the Jedi didn't recognize it was a game. Not even the great Jedi Master Yoda, 800 years old, with all of his power and insight, didn't see the game that was being played on them. And by not recognizing the game, they lost. They lost the game to the point that where their temples was burned down, all of their youth was killed, all the structure that they had created and developed in the universe had been destroyed because they simply did not recognize the game. One thing we have to understand is that it's a game. And once you start realizing it's a game, you start to learn how to play the game. And you could even play the game and play your way out of the game. I'm not saying stay in the game, but you have to recognize where you're at, what pieces you have to move, and start moving those pieces in a strategic way to bring about the effect that you have decided upon. And you have to have a game plan in the beginning. Most people are just operating. They don't understand it's a game. They don't have a game plan. They don't know where they're trying to go. They go into relationships based on how I feel about her when I saw her and not about who she is, how she helps the mission, and where she can take me, or where she can assist me and where I'm trying to go. None of that comes into effect. But when you understand you're playing a game, everything around you start to recognize as pieces to get to the end goal, the game plan. But anyway, that's what I wanted to add to
that. Well, let me say this about that.
Let me say
First of
this
all,
about that.
let me say this about that. The Clone Wars ain't Star Wars. Let me just go on record saying that. That is not Star Wars. That's some old add-on addition late to the game stuff. That ain't real Star Wars. But I'll let you make it.
Oh, I'll date myself if I tell you this, and I unfortunately now, if you only saw the movies, that would be true. But if you're a real Star Wars nerd and you've read all the books, the Clone Wars is a part of that. See, what we saw originally, and what we think is one, two, and three is not one, two, and three. It's episodes 4, 5, and 6, really. And one, two, and three has the Clone Wars in it. Those books that was wrote, they have the Clone Wars in it, and that was all a part of how you got to 4, 5, and 6. How you got to a Luke Skywalker. How you even got to that type of Empire Strikes, but how you got to that. Those stories existed before, and,
I,
and and I had a lot of time to read about 40 or some of those Star Wars books to understand this story. But go ahead, E.
I young fella, was having those conversations before you was born. Like literally, literally. That's some fucked up shit. But literally, yeah, the whole 3 books in the middle was a big topic of conversation between my mom and pops and their friends when that shit started coming out. So yeah, but when I say Clone Wars and all of that, the TV shows and all of that is what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
ain't Star Wars. Star Wars is what happened in the 70s when that shit came out and it was this new idea. It's just like the Matrix is the first Matrix. Everything else is just a attempt to continue the conversation. You want the real what it was, it's that before they started trying to reproduce what that was. But I digress. What you described about the attitude of a lot of homeless folks is very much also a prepper's attitude, the disconnecting, but it's done in a more productive and empowering way. Understanding the same things, the rat race and being caught up in it, enslaved to this, enslaved to that, but rather than just throw your hands up, which I've thought honestly and truly in the past, or just being a guy that rides a boxcar Willie, just ride a train around the country for the rest of my life. That that is epic. That is so perfect in so many ways for me. But the attitude of a prepper is very much the same: to detach oneself, to unassimilate oneself from the system, and realign oneself with some sense of actual empowerment and expression of self, and living a more a truer life without all of the BS that gets in the way. But the last thing, when you said you were talking about the what is it characteristics of that all games have, there's one that I prefer that's my favorite, and I don't know if you were trying to mention a whole bunch, but just to throw this 2 piece in there for you. One characteristic is also that games have a beginning, a middle, and an end. So at some point, there's going to be an end game for this that we're dealing with. And a lot of folks believe that that's what we're in the throes of. And that's why these institutions are becoming ever more important. You know, you say back in the day that Black folks were not going to be the ones to set shit off. We're just not. We don't have the organization, the power. We don't have anything to make a true stand about anything in this country. Starting to do it in Africa to push back, but specifically here in the US, we don't have that. So our best bet, in my mind, then and as now, is to concentrate on those institutions. And that's what those institutions are for, because when the elephants rumble, we're just snakes, we're just ants in the grass. And our best bet is to shore up those economics as those elephants rumble and begin to destroy and continue, not even begin, but continue to destroy one another as we roll into the throes, the death throes of an empire. That for me is the part of understanding where we are in the game. We're not at the beginning of this game, this capitalism and white Western domination. We're not at the beginning, we're not at the middle. If we really look at it, all of these Western nations are having the exact same problems. Brown people, period, across the board, and their treatment and mistreatment of brown folks. So having these institutions in place are what are the things that are going to carry us through and to ensure that we remain who it is we are, that we're still able to build again, to do what it is we did in the first place, and the second and third, and however many places it's been, but to build again, having those institutions and understanding of those institutions, so we can start to once again start what is it manage our homes, yeah, which is also some of the economics that we haven't been taught. It's no surprise we're not managing our communal resources, our economics, when we don't even know how to do that at home. We're dependent on a check from the government, the corporation, whatever, the rap game or whatever game it is we're playing. And so our how we manage our homes reflects that. And usually our homes are mismanaged. And even those of us who are doing well financially, the economics of home includes the rearing of the children. And that part of economics, when you spend that much time in pursuit of what you think economics is, AKA finances, then something else has to give way. There's a pain, there's some dysfunction that is created when all the attention is put so much in developing the financial end of the game. That's all.
I agree 100%. I'm gonna add this and see when you learn that you're and when you accept that you're dealing with a game and you accept, as Brother E just said, that one of the fundamental aspects of any game is there is a start and there's an end. So when you're thinking as a strategist, any intelligent strategist, a general, somebody who's leading a people or a group of people, you have to develop a strategy with an end game in mind. You have to develop a strategy with an end game in mind and a recognition of the board and the rules that you're playing by, and even the rules that have been created, because there are rules in this game that have been created in a way to make you think that these rules are non-malleable when they really are. Because those who understand the rules of the game transform, manipulate, and mutate these rules at will. They have the ability to do that because they understand the rules. Give you a idea of what I mean. Uh, that I find to be that I've been trying to get a lot of my people to understand and use. And this is just on a personal level. And this is when you recognize that when you're dealing with one of the rules of revolutionary science is that when dealing with any issues, you have to deal with issues in a way that the people understand and that is important to them. Now, the major issues when we talk about global economics is very important to the people, but the people don't know how important they are. That's what I mean when I talked about people's consciousness developed from A to Z, A, B, C, D in steps. So we have to deal on a level that the people get. And one of the things that the people get is how finances affect them personally. Like, to give you an example of what I mean, when dealing with credit, one of the rules of this game, or one of the principles of this game is credit. Now, credit can be utilized in a very powerful way if you're intelligent. These people use credit, they call it OPM, other people's money. They use credit, they use debt to make more money. We use debt to get more things. Poor people use debt, and I ain't gonna just say we, because it ain't limited to just black people. Poor people, poorly educated people who don't understand economics and don't understand personal finance, they use debt to make themselves look rich, to buy things, to buy creature comforts, to buy better vehicles, to buy nicer looking houses, to buy jewelry, to buy things like this, things that will keep them forever in the rat race because they see the end game as only looking good. That's what they see the end game as. Or like Brother E just said, if I got money, I'm good. That's why they on Instagram with money phones. They got stacks of money and they acting like they talking on the phone. They see that as the end game. And to quote Jay on the song, he said, dudes on the ground with money to their ear. There's a disconnect. We don't call that money over here. And what he's trying to tell you is that he's not identifying He's not identifying money or currency as money anymore. Him and his team is playing the game at a different level, so they see money as something else. Their transfer of value is something completely different. But my major point is, I was just dealing with a brother a couple of weeks ago. I was showing him how to run his own credit check for free. I was showing him how to do this. I was showing him how to look at, see what accounts he has open, and I was showing him how to dispute all these accounts. Because you can literally, if you put in for a credit card, let's say you put in, you got denied, you could dispute it and get that hard check removed from your credit. You can remove it. And a lot of people don't even understand that anything that you're not actively using, even if you are the one that put in for it, you can remove it. All you have to do is lock your credit account and then dispute everything and anything that you yourself are not using. If you have a mortgage and you live in that house, you can't dispute it because they'll be able to prove that's you. But you cannot prove, you cannot, if you, and many of you done went through this. You go to a car lot, you go to a car dealership, and you don't already have a secured loan already. So you go there and they're gonna run you with like 8 different people, supposedly to try to find you the cheapest rate. Not true. They trying to find you the rate that they can get you so that they can get the so that they can get, what is it called when a salesman
Commission.
sells something and they, what is it called?
Commission.
Commission. That's what they're trying to do. So they'll run you with 8 different people. You can literally go jump on your computer, seal your credit report with the 3 major credit reporting bureaus, and then you could dispute all the other 7 because you probably got the loan with one of them. You could dispute the other 7 and get that instantly dropped off your credit report. You can freeze your credit checks in places like Sage Stream and Nexus Lexus, and people won't even be able to do background checks on you. You can do this, but people, when you don't know it, it's almost like you can't do it because you don't know it. This is an aspect of the game. People can even get, if you got your stuff froze, people can have your driver's license and your social security number and still can't open in there cancel your name because your stuff is froze. I mean, and you could do this all for no price whatsoever. It don't even take a whole lot of intelligence to know how to do it. You can watch you a couple of YouTube videos and they'll walk you through this step by step. So it don't take a lot of intelligence. It don't take a lot of money to do it. The reason I bring this up is I'm just talking about the game that we're in and us not knowing how these rules operate and how this, and then how it affects us because we don't know. There are small things we need to learn, and when we learn these small things that affect us personally, we learn how to play the game on the community level in the way that this game affects our people. And then we learn how to separate ourselves from this game and start building our own game. Because that's what most people do. Jews, that's what they do. They understand the game to such a degree that they've developed their own game and their own economy. Hell, Italians have done it. When you think of Italian, you only think of the mafia, and that's just a part of that government that protected their community, but they developed their own game. And these are things that I think about when I think or consider black economic power. We do not understand what economics is and how economics is supposed to be applied to a free people. Boy, you had a look on your face like you wanted to jump in there.
And I wanted to jump in there so bad on both of y'all.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm just going to start with where you ended. Keep in mind, our people don't know that they don't know. And I think that's our biggest issue. And part of the secret is to hide the fact that we don't know and make us think that we know something. When you make us think we know something, when we really don't know that we don't know, then that's what allows us to stay on a hamster wheel. And then keep in mind, we've talked about this, maybe not in depth on the Panther 48, but we have what we call our life cores. Our life cores, which is a part of our mechanisms that go into exactly what Psyche is saying when we talk about the game. Now, keep in mind, when we talk about the game, our life core is referring to that as identity. That's why I emphasize the fact that we have to have our own identity, which basically means that we become the game maker. If we're not I agree with what Psyche's saying. The part I disagree is the fact that we need to put ourselves in a position of production. That's why we stated that earlier. If we're not the ones in control of our own production, then we're playing their game as opposed to playing our own game, which goes into why we stated, I talked about being architect. I said institution architecture and infrastructure. those three things is what create that playing field, right? So right now, the thing is our people need to learn how to crack the code so that we can develop our own games and have the right mindset. Again, going back to the life core, we have the game is identity. The rat would be what we call the laboratory mechanism, and the race would be the engineering mechanism. So from those three standpoints, keep in mind, remember when they talk about the rat race, what we're talking about is the fact that rats are what created in a laboratory. In other words, they use them for human experimentation. So we need to have our own laboratories so we can do our own experimentation and not be controlled by somebody else's exploitation. And the race itself is basically just engineering, which is design, control, and developing something, a means of production. You have to engineer. These are the things that we don't know that we don't know, so therefore we don't do. And all we do at that point is emulate what's being done to us and basically try to create more consumers, which is why the biggest part of the problem I see when people think of land ownership, the first thing they think about is real estate. Well, let me go buy up some properties and rent them out to some people. What are we doing at that point? We're reduplicating and emulating the same process of creating a renter's mentality for our own people. We want to own some land so that we can turn around and put somebody on that land, our own people on that land, and have them rent to us. You see, and now if that's not reduplicating and emulating capitalism, what is it? So our position of land use should be to control the resources on that land and let those resources of that land help to develop and pull our people out of poverty, out of exploitation. Going back to what Brother E does with his land. So that should be our concept of land, is being in control of our own resources, not to turn around. And I'm not knocking real estate as a piece of the puzzle. But the point being, first thing we think about is putting somebody on our land and making them pay us to be on that land, which is just emulating the exploitative concept of what's going on and how we got in the position we in as Black people. By not owning land, we basically have a renter's mentality across the board. And so therefore we don't place value in land because it don't belong to us. And when we don't place value in land, we don't place value in anything else that goes along with that, which takes us to the next thing, which is developing and defending Black political power. Black people, we don't recognize political power because we don't recognize governance. We don't recognize governance because we don't see self-determination. We don't see self-determination, which means when we think of political power, all we know to think about is voting. We don't think about it from the standpoint of self-determination and self-sufficiency and controlling the resources within our own economy, within our own environment. And because of our turnoff of what we've been taught about what political power means, we don't even participate on any level of even the political system here from the standpoints of being able to re-empower ourselves in some levels to where we can work out ourselves back to a position of total empowerment. So when we talk about that point number 3, again, local objectives, people, not national, international, but local. Local politics, we can have some say-so and create some levels of empowerment for our people. Because keep in mind, tax dollars are paid or coming from you. There are things on a local level that you can work and manipulate and control and work in your favor so that you can then use that to create a scenario to where you are in control of your means of production. But because we look at things simply from a presidential level and we think that that's how politics operate all across the board, then we don't participate in it. We don't participate in it. And then that causes us to not even think about what it means to be in self-governance. So we have to realize that society is all about how a people govern themselves. So if we don't even learn what the enemy is doing to govern itself and to govern and exploit its people, how are we going to learn how to do it ourselves? See, you can't defeat an enemy that you're not willing to study. You can't learn who you are if you're not willing to self-reflect. So from that standpoint, number 3 on our local objectives has to do with developing and defending Black political power. We have to define what Black political power means, and we have to create that level of engineering as it applies to that to where we are the manufacturers of our own games. Not to go and turn this into that Star Wars thing, but remember, the whole point of the galaxy in control was either clones or androids. That's all you had basically going on. They had the people pinned between clones and androids, and everything was manipulated through those two types of things. And if we look at what's happening now, even with the current state of politics, that's exactly why people like Elon Musk are so powerful, because they are creating a basically an android race and proving that humanity is or people, so to speak, or can be replaced and should be replaced. And the ones that are not being replaced would be the ones that are obviously operating through the clone mentality and emulating the same process that keeps us embedded in oppression in the first place. Now, what y'all got to say about that? We ain't gonna be able to go through all 9 of these objectives, so we got to have a close-off point at some point.
You can stop at this one. I mean, divide it up. If it's 3, if it's 9, that's 3 per episode.
I'm all right with that.
All right, I'm gonna add to this politics then. I was going to be quiet so we can run through them, but since we decided to do that, I'm gonna add to this politics. One of the things that, and it's kind of like what we just said about economics. The first things that we hear about these phrases and these terms, we grow up thinking that that's all it has to do with politics, presidential election, economics, get you some money. We think that that's it. Money is just a tool in the economic toolbox. Economics is a tool in the political toolbox. Politics comes from the Greek word when we deal with politics. The word literally, the etymology literally means policy. So politics is the science of design and policy. Policy is the rules, the structures, the more ways, 4 ways, the culture that the people have decided to live by. Again, look at the word politics. Polite is a word in that word. The word polite literally means citizen. So to be a polite or to be polite means to be a good citizen, one who is properly following policy. Police, another word that's in that word, when you look at it, you can see it. Police are those who the polites have chose to enforce policy. All of this goes together. So politics is the science of designing a society. All of the things that is required that are required in a society to help a society properly function, to create the rules and laws, the economic systems, the educational systems. All of that is a part of politics. None of that comes into realization. What our children are being taught in school are a result of politics. Every single prisoner in prison in this society is a political prisoner, because it's the political policy that made whatever activity that person done illegal in the first place. All of it is politics. Once you understand that, then the people start to operate politics properly. And one of the key factors, we talked about it with economics, one of the key factors in politics is the people. The people are so important because the mind of the people and how the people think, how the people move is the crucial aspect of political power. That's why the Constitution starts with "we the people." That's why the Black Panther Party said we are the people's army. That's why even in Chicago, the People's Nation called themselves the People's Nation. This term is consistently being used because all politically intelligent people understands that all political power comes from the people. The people have to consent and submit to your authority or your policy in order for you to even have political power. And there's only 2 ways to do it. You either convince the people through proper education, or you convince the people through miseducation. You manipulate and you deter and control the actions of the people. That's why studies, social sciences like sociology was created. Sociologists study people and their reactions to social events. Once they study these things and get the data, then you can make strategic decisions on ways to push and pull the people. A good example of that was those stimulus checks that was given out to the people during the COVID crisis. When you think about it and understand it, you got to understand that your government didn't do that because they love you so much and wanted to make sure you had $1,400, $1,200, whatever it was, worth of groceries. Because think about it, $1,400 did not go that far. And the people that decided to give you those free checks understood the effect that it would have on the economy. How do I know? I went to a community college, and I understand this from economics that it was gonna cause inflation and have an effect on our finances later. So the people that went to Harvard and these big schools and studied economics, I guarantee you they knew. But they also knew that if they didn't give you this free money and help you to calm down, because that's what the purpose of it was. The purpose of it was to control your emotional response because you was dealing with something that you had never seen or heard of before, and it caused you to overreact. It caused you to panic, and you start making store runs to buy up all the water and the toilet paper. And your actions, your reaction, your improper reaction was causing a actual social crisis that didn't even exist. So they start giving you free money to get you to calm down and to get you to have confidence that your government was there for you and we're going to take care of you. You don't have anything to worry about. Those unemployment checks that you got when you weren't able to work, those stimulus checks that you got, all of those things was to control a social response, knowing that it would take us to where we're at right now. When you understand politics and economics, you can foresee that, and those things are important in the game. I was telling somebody we were playing chess the other day. If you're playing chess, you cannot focus on the move that I'm making right now. You can't focus on that. You have to understand the move I'm making right now is to set up the move I'm gonna make 3 steps from now. I'm not thinking, I'm not even considering right now. Everything I'm doing right now is to create something in the future so that I can go toward my end game, which is to checkmate you. You have to ask yourself, not, man, I just saw him move that pawn right there. Let me counter that. No, why did he move that pawn right there? What is his goal? That is there for a reason. It is a purpose. It is a purpose behind that. He didn't just do that for the hell of it. He did that because he's looking for something. And when you understand that, you can predict these things. These people, when they saved the big car companies in Detroit with stimulus, with what they called them, they didn't call them stimulus checks. What did they call them? Bailouts, with economic bailouts. It was a reason for that. And once you start to understand that, really understand politics, then you start to understand what's going on around you. Again, the game is the game. It's all in the game.
That last thing you stated, though, keep in mind, this is why I said that we can't go into stuff being emotionally charged, but we have to have intention. When we said that earlier about uh, us being intentional about our design, us being intentional about the moves we made, which is the foundational generational advancement, is just hitting on what Psych is saying, just got through saying. Because if we go into this emotionally charged, then all I'm going to think about is the move you're making right now. But if I recognize that we are supposed to be building infrastructure with the things Psych talked on earlier in regards to government, is basically institution building. When we build institutions, then we are in that position. This is why we, as Panthers, talk about continuity of a Panther, because we have to put ourselves back in a position of self-governance. And the only way we do that is building institutions, building infrastructure, and the design of architecture, which is our way of life, which is why I say when we talk about this whole thing of the game, that is us putting ourselves in that position of control.
Yeah, I see a lot of little videos and whatnot on the ground of folks mouthing off at the cops, telling them, I don't answer questions. You can't, am I being detained? Am I this? Am I that? Exercising their rights, as they like to say it. And I see us cheering each other on uh, and when we do that. And as good as that makes us feel, we have no concept. We still don't believe what we know to be true. And it's just weird to me. If a cop comes up and harasses some young kid, telling him, let me pat you down, da da da, obviously he's in the wrong. We all know that. But the reality of it is, what's right is the pistol on that cop's hip, the radio that he's carrying, and most importantly, the badge that he sports. because they have the institution to enforce all of that. They make the rules. They decide when, where, and how to enforce the rules. Da 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 da. And again, I'm not saying do or don't do it, but realize our political landscape, economic landscape, educational landscape, it's not going to be too long before refusing, and it may already be happening, but refusing to ID yourself is going to be probable cause to send you to El Salvador. It's just that simple. Oh, you don't, and I get the logic. Makes perfect sense. Oh, you don't want to tell me where you're from? You must be hiding something. You must be an illegal. You got to go. Easy. And because we get emotionally charged behind these things, we jump up and want to participate, but we have no institution to teach us how, when, where, why, what are the ramifications of what it is we're doing. We have no economic institutions. So if they do pick you up, you're on your own to get an attorney. You're on your own to get bail if you get bail. You're on your own doing everything that you got to do to try to navigate the system that's more and more coming full force to get you. And we have no political institution. So we can't even directly lobby the folks who have the power to say, come and go, or to make an expression, or to take the funding away, or to do anything. And so that's, to build on that emotional, how we try to organize based off of emotion. We get wired up and want to organize. White folks organize and then get wired up. That's how that shit's supposed to work. You're supposed to put the foundation in place so that when you pop off, you got something there to get your back. We're not doing that because, back to the education, we're individuals. And the individual's purpose is to serve the individual. The desires of the individual, the safety of the individual, me, myself, and I. And that's at the crux of all of this. And I think that that's why they're in this order, because they have to build in this direction. We've got billionaires, but we got no power. We got millionaires who are selling kids to other millionaires. There's no way to hold any of them accountable because we don't have institutions, and we're led by our desire to bebop and feel good and all the rest of the bullshit, our own individual selves, until it hits our cousin. And then all of a sudden we want to join some type of push. We want to be a part of something. We're upset. So yeah, it all falls back and it all builds on one another. As I keep saying, I don't know, I wasn't intentional, but I seem to find myself saying a lot. It's the same conversation. You can replace the word political, economic, education, move them in and out, and just move the words around. It's the same idea. It's the same concept, looking at it from different angles. These are all parts of what it takes to just have fundamental things, just have fundamental sense of stability. Just these three, just these first three. If we had just these first three, we'd be golden. So you ever look at somebody like you ever wonder why Will Smith's kids are so fucked up? And they're fucked up. I don't care what you say. That motherfucker walking around with a dress doing, what was it? Will Smith, Jada, was she play off with some dude and then they went and talked to him about it's just crazy shit. You wonder why his kids are fucked up. You wonder why, what's the name? What's Jay-Z, since you brought Jay-Z up, what's Jay-Z kid? What's the name? Blue Roses?
Blue Ivy.
Yeah, Blue Ivy and whoever else is there. In a few years, if not already, you're going to be wondering why they fucked up. It's a reason Hunter Biden was a crackhead. Because the parents, the community, have invested themselves in something other than developing the next generation. That's something we're not used to doing. Traditionally, everything we have is invested in the next generation. Because that's our way. That's how we take care of one another. The individual doesn't have to do that. The individual parent, I'm a good parent. I can focus. I can be that's some bullshit, hear sisters saying all the time, I can pursue a career and be a mother. No, you can't. There's going to be a problem. It's just going to happen. There's always a trade-off. And we've chosen to make the trade-off us in pursuit of what it is our individual self wants. So yeah, that like I said, it's all the same conversation to me. Maybe that's why I get irritated with it. In fact, I figured out my issue with money is not so much with money per se, it's our fixation with money, as if getting money means something. You know, Brother David said it best, that old motherfucker, old angry cat. he said, what did he say? If we valued each other, we wouldn't need money. But we put our value in something someone else has told us to put our value in, and we no longer value one another. Now, if I'm producing eggs, I need somebody to teach a gun class how to work weapons and whatnot. Say, War, need you to teach an hour-long class. I'll give you 12 eggs. We can exchange that. That's economics. His family gets breakfast. I get a class. Myself and some other folks get a class, get some training, get some knowledge, some education on what to do. That's economics. That's us taking care of our needs with our resources, us being the number one resource. Otherwise, we end up with what's that boy, RT, little RT? Wasn't that the little rapper boy was saying them horrible
Yes,
things? Yeah. So we
yes,
end up with a nation of that. And that's not a diss to him. He's a victim. That's a diss to all of us because we've let it happen.
yeah.
And that's just the bottom line. We continue to let it happen. We know what the hell needs to be done because we'll all say it. Black folk are quick to say, oh, black folk need to do this. Black folk need to do that. But when you say, hey, then let's go do it. I'm ready. Let's take off. Oh, I got to go do that. We got all kinds of excuses why not to do it, how not to do it, why it won't work. So yeah, my bad. I didn't mean to rant. Sorry.
True indeed. I'm gonna add this because we're getting ready to close out, and then I see War is ready to speak on something. To add just a quick thing to what he just said, and I think we need to build deeper on finances on another day. But to understand something about money and why money came into the game or why currency, because there are different types of money. When you study economics, it's gonna shock you. But currency, see, when a group of people defines the currency, produces the currency and gets you to buy into this one type of currency, then they are able to become the middleman between you and the economics Brother E just talked about. If Brother E wants to trade 12 eggs for an hour-long defense class from Brother War, then that's economics. It's something between Brother E and Brother War. If I want to make sure I have some kind of say so and some kind of control and that I can profit in some way off of every economic transition, then I'll create currency to become the go between War and Brother E. Now, Brother E pays War for the hour long class. Brother War then goes to the grocery store to buy the eggs. In the payment of E to War, there are taxes that I charge War for. And then when War goes to the store to buy his eggs, there's another set of taxes that I charge. Every time an economic transition takes place, I'm charging, I want to get my beak wet. I charge some of it, and I'm able to track all economic transitions that are taking place in my society. That's where currency becomes important. And another thing that I think that we need to understand when we're dealing with currency and we're dealing with the tracking of this is why things like drug dealing is so illegal. Oh yes, don't get me wrong. I'm against heroin and crack floating through the community and things like this, but these things are not illegal for that reason. This is just not true. If that was the case, then alcohol wouldn't be so widely distributed. I mean dispersed. It's because that I cannot control or have a play in the economic transaction when somebody's selling drugs, when somebody's selling weed, even countries where cocaine and marijuana grows naturally in the soil. These countries, these Southern American countries, where the soil is just literally perfect for the growth of marijuana. If I didn't outlaw these things, if I didn't make these things against the law, then these this produce, this marijuana would be the cash crop of these particular countries. Cocaine would be the cash crop of these particular countries. And these countries will go from being a third world country to a first world country overnight. You have to understand that it's all a game and it's all politics. Go ahead, Brother Warren. We can bring it to a close.
I just basically wanted to, and this is primarily for active Panthers that are already utilizing local objectives. One thing that has to be recognized that a lot of people probably haven't sought into is that what the first three local objectives creates what we call the trifecta. So everything else is building off of those first three, which is education, economics, and politics. As we jump back on and revisit the local objectives and continue forward with it, just remember that the first three are the ones that help to build the foundational generational advancement. And I don't think enough emphasis has been placed on that through Panthers, recognizing that's what's going on. So keep that in mind, Panthers, as you move forward. When you talk about your local objectives, the first three are the ones that you use to build everything else from. And so when we talk about developing local objectives, it has to do with giving the Panther a local activation, like we talked about in the previous episode when we say we're activating a chapter to commission themselves to do work in the community. What is it that I am supposed to be doing on a local level? What is it I'm supposed to be building? You're supposed to be building an education. You're supposed to be building an economic base. You're supposed to be building a political base. And that is based around defining and developing and defending what it is that we are supposed to be as a people. And on that same note, I like I chain it together by saying this: change your perception to define yourself in order to develop our pursuit to preserve our defense by way of seizing the time, reflecting on self, and connecting the power. That's how those flow together. So when we talk about find, develop, defend, perceive, pursue, and preserve, that is the way those flow together. So the three first local objectives are building just on that, which is, again, why they connect with infrastructure, architecture, and institution. That can't be emphasized enough, because when we talk about self-determination as a people, we have to be visionary enough to see what that means. Until we're able to do that, all we can do is emulate someone else's practice. And as long as we emulate someone else's practice, that means we are in their rat race, as opposed to us developing our own means of identity, laboratory, and engineering, which is, again, our mechanism structure.